Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition. Obviously, last week I ran out of time and I didn't get to what to expect from financial therapy. So that's what we're going to talk about in this particular episode. This is somewhat of a pretty diverse topic because every planner and every therapist and every financial therapist will have their own brand, their own way that they do financial therapy. And like we talked about last time, financial therapy is on such a huge continuum that you might go to one financial therapist who is really dialed in on the financial side and another one who's really dialed in on the therapeutic side and wonder if this is financial therapy at all. So I think you can anticipate some basic things that will happen in a financial therapy session. And something unique is that a lot of financial therapists haven't necessarily been to another financial therapist. Hopefully, a lot of them have done their own work on their money issues, but that may or may not have been in conjunction with a financial therapist. Very possibly with a therapist and very possibly with a financial planner. So I find that a little bit unique, but on the other hand, not terribly so, because financial therapy is so young and so new. So let's start with the first thing that will probably happen, and that would be you reach out to a financial therapist. Some of them have intake forms that you could fill out. Others may not. Some will meet with you initially with no charge. It could be 20 minutes, it could be a half hour, might even be an hour. Others will charge from the very first meeting. And I would say there's really no standard protocol here. Each financial therapist has their own preference, and there's pros and cons to each method. I would say probably the busier that a financial therapist is, the more reluctant they will be to give away too much time with no charge. And I know many that would just charge from the very first session. And I think it depends a lot about their intake, how much work is done up front. I know that with a lot of my first-time clients, I do give them a number of assessments up front, sometimes a lot of times before they even come in. And that way when we start, I know quite a bit about the client. So upfront assessments are pretty common. This is where the financial therapist will ask questions to try and understand your financial history, your emotional relationship with money, and to determine what the pressing financial issues or challenges are. I look at initial assessments much like you would lab work with a medical professional. It's just important to gather information. When you go to a financial planner, there's something that they call data gathering. And it's almost malpractice to start giving advice in a financial context without any gathering of the facts, just as it would be negligent of a medical practitioner to start treating you for a problem he thinks you might have, but where he's or she has run no tests. So the initial assessment, I think, is pretty important. There are a huge number of various assessments that are done. Some of those that I give have been written about or listed in Facilitating Financial Health. I really like the KMSI-R, the Client's Money Script Inventory. I would say I almost give that to every client that comes in, oftentimes right up front, oftentimes before they come in. When I look at that, it gives me an idea, just a kind of a general lay of the land as to what the money beliefs are with this particular person. Depending on the client, I may give them a money egg to do up front, where you go through and you draw the positive and negative money events of your life. I may give them the money atom, which is a exercise where a person draws their family. It would be a 2D genealogram. I think you're familiar probably with the 1D genealogram, which is very structured in its construction, that shows all the relationships and people in your heritage. The 2D goes a bit further because it's very freeform, and it begins to really give a lot more information as to the importance of relationships and the importance of various people in your life and how the money flowed between them. There's the incompletion exercise that can be helpful. There's just so many exercises, and these are just mine. And I think every financial therapist is going to come across something that's really helpful for them, and I use some other initial evaluations, like George Kinder's 3 questions is a good one. So there will be some type of an evaluation. Maybe the financial therapist will send them to you before you ever meet with them. Maybe it will be after you meet with them. It's kind of up to that therapist. Like I said, I tend to send some ahead of time just to get things going. And also, these assessments are not just for the therapist. They can shed a lot of light for the client prior to coming in. I can't tell you how many clients I've had that have come in and they've done the exercises, and they've already received insights as to where we might go, or where the origination of the problem that's brought them in may be coming from. So initial assessments are really important, and they can be ongoing throughout certainly the early part of the relationship. there may be some exploration of money scripts. And I've already alluded to this. Money scripts are those thoughts, feelings, beliefs that you have about money. I've done a number of podcasts on money scripts, on the 4 different money categories that money scripts fall into. And it's pretty common in financial therapy to talk about your money scripts, your deep-seated beliefs about money. Typically, they formed in childhood and from past experiences, and they were adopted to keep us safe. The problem is that while they worked when we were kids, they often may stop working when circumstances change when we move into adulthood. That's why we called them scripts, just like a play. The script works real good in the right play, but it's pretty rigid, and if the play changes and the script doesn't, you can have a disaster. So that's a really nice start, and you can do your own money script work. You can probably Google the KMSI-R and find it online. If you need one, let me know, and I'll be happy to email you one. Then from that, and this doesn't necessarily have to move in progression. I mean, there's no real steps, but at some point in time, there's going to start addressing the emotional blocks, the key reason why you're here, and that's probably presented very, very quickly. And the realization that money issues often come from emotional barriers, from unresolved trauma, fear, anxiety about money, just everything that can be holding you back. So typically there's a time of exploration in where you're talking a lot about what's going on, what the pain point is. And the therapist's job initially is to really try to listen deeply and to really try to understand what's happening. Typically, it's not real helpful to give out a lot of information or a lot of knowledge or to try and fix the problem, because typically people are not coming to a financial therapist because they don't have the knowledge. Usually they've tried everything they know how to try, and that's what's bringing them in when they begin to realize that there's an emotional component to the blockage of moving forward on the financial issue. Now, that's not to say that there just may not be the knowledge there. I can't tell you how many times when I've been working with a client and I've been working, say, in an IFS part session, and we're working with the part that I remember once I was working with a client who's had started a new business, and we were working with her, the part of her that was running the business. And if I remember right, we identified that part was probably about 12 years old. And this part was just beating up the system because it had been 1 year and they weren't profitable. Now, the business was paying them a salary, but there was no designated profit left over. And at some point in time in the exploration, I said, ask the part managing your business and who's so upset that you're not turning a profit if it would like some more information. And the client said, yeah, he'd be open to that. So I said, well, tell it that it is not very common that a new business turns a profit in 1 year or even 3 years. That oftentimes it takes 5 years, and it even can take longer to actually start turning a profit. And there's many companies you can point to. I don't know how long it took Tesla, for example, to turn a profit. But even small businesses, it can take a long time. And I remember the client saying, oh, he's really taken that in. He's pretty stunned. And then reporting to me, oh, he's really getting small now. He's feeling so much shame because he didn't have that information. And here he was just beaten up on every other part of the financial system for not turning a profit. And then we worked with the shame around that. So there was a case where just some knowledge made a big difference. But in many cases, additional knowledge isn't what's needed. What's needed is to hear the story. To hear the story that is behind the blockage, behind the seemingly inexplainable or illogical behavior that's going on. And once a person can really tell that story, I can't think of a time that the behavior remains illogical. It is typically very logical when we understand the emotional, the emotions and the story behind the behavior. Something else that can be addressed would be an awareness of cognitive biases. And therapists will often get into this. It's more of a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy tool, which is where you can look at things like loss aversion or confirmation bias or anchoring that unconsciously affect financial decisions and bring awareness to you when this is happening. And I've talked a lot about this in the podcast, a lot about cognitive biases. Well, if I get started on them, I'll probably not stop. It doesn't help too much if the therapist says, well, there you go, anchoring again. Now you're into herd mentality. That's confirmation bias. But it does help if the therapist can help you explore the emotions behind the biases. For example, confirmation bias is where you look for data that supports what you believe. And so often in money and investing in financial issues, what we believe is not necessarily fact. And yet we only look to data, only read books, only read articles, whatever the case may be, that support the poor data that we have, or support the myth, so to speak. So a lot of times what needs to be explored isn't the fact that you're looking for data to confirm the error or the myth, but it's what's the fear? What's the fear behind it? What happens if you discover that belief was wrong? And what are the messages around that? For me as a type 1 in the Enneagram, the underlying basic fear is that I'm defective, I'm corrupt. And so for me to say, well, if I find out that I've been promoting something that's wrong, I've been believing something that's wrong, I'm really attached to being right, because if I'm wrong, that means I am a failure. Not that I made a mistake, I am a mistake. So these can be huge, huge. So a therapist will help you take a look at those. And again, they can use a lot of different therapeutic exercises. They might have you journal, do some journaling on what's coming up for you when you consider various behaviors. That can be very useful. Mindfulness practices, meditation can be very, very helpful. Maybe they'll have you do some role-playing, money conversations. I mean, there's just many, many tools out there that a therapist may use. Other things that could be part of the work of a financial therapist is helping you with family and relational dynamics. Now, a lot of people come to financial therapy as individuals, but there's also a demand for couples, and financial issue with couples is one of the major disagreements in a coupleship. There's a lot of different studies out there. I've seen it listed that finances can be a number 1 cause of divorce or a number 2 cause of divorce. Certainly financial issues rank among the top things that couples can disagree about, and that can bring a lot of disharmony into the relationship. I worked with a couple once who told me, we get along fine. Everything in our coupleship is great except money, and it's our number 1 pain point. I remember that couple, I didn't mention this, I had them do some work with the Enneagram and taken some Enneagram evaluations, which proved to be super insightful for them in helping them understand their dynamic as a couple and how that relates to how they do money. Sometimes the financial therapist will meet with the client and children. I have been involved in a number of meetings between a parent and a child, oftentimes involving enabling, but they can involve a number of things around estate planning or education planning, just an unlimited number of things where a financial therapist can be brought into the actual family dynamics and the conflicts going on within the family. You might work with a financial therapist that can work with you on your goal setting and planning, especially once the underlying trauma is visited. And this is so important that it's often hard to move on to doing planning or looking at goals and the future possibilities until the past problems are addressed. And so if you're working with a financial therapist who's more on the coaching side of things, that doesn't have the deeper trauma skills, this may be the time that financial therapist refers you out to a financial therapist who's trained in trauma. Because it's really important that the underlying trauma is addressed, the underlying parts are liberated, and in so many words, healed, before trying to build a house on that foundation. The trauma can be the unstable soil. So that really needs to be resolved before successful planning around where that trauma is based is going to be done. It's just so key to almost anything, any belief. Something as simple as saving for retirement. Well, it's hard to plan to save for retirement when the underlying trauma is there, and there was the trauma in childhood of all your money disappearing when your parents declared bankruptcy. Except you didn't know what bankruptcy is. You just knew that all of the money you had in a little savings account was gone, and that maybe this happened a couple times over your life, and you learned, don't save money. You better spend it all, because if you save it, it won't be there for you to enjoy. I mean, stuff like that as we look back at as adults seems makes sense and seems so simple, can take years for it to come to the surface that that's what's been behind our spending and the fact that we can't save. So resolving the trauma is so important before we try to do the goal setting and the planning that sits on top of that. That's necessary. So you can then get to doing more financial coaching. You could start doing some financial planning. Most financial therapists that I know are not, they can come from the financial planning world, but they aren't going to do a financial plan for you. So this would be the time that your financial therapist could actually work conjointly or in tandem or in partnership with a planner. And maybe that financial therapist will help you find a planner. Maybe you have a planner that they can begin working with. But this is a wonderful partnership when you can bring in your financial therapist to work with your planner. That's something, I started doing that back in 2007, 2008 with clients, where I would work together with them with a therapist. And then that has been flipped, where I have been in the therapist position working with a client's financial planner, or working with them, since I have a financial planning firm, working with their planner in our financial planning firm. So think about this, that can be a powerful marriage of professionals when your financial therapist and your financial planner are working together. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Your financial therapist can continue to support you. Maybe you cut down meetings. I mean, once a week is kind of the industry gold standard, but maybe you meet once every couple of weeks. You could cut that down to once a month or once a quarter, just to do maintenance and to keep on track with the inevitable things that will come up to challenge your financial sanity, so to speak. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and maybe pulled back a little bit of the curtain about what to expect when you go to a financial therapist. So thanks again for listening. If you have any questions, please email me at rick@rickkahler.com. You can go to advancedwellbeing.com. That's advanced-wellbeing.com and learn more. So thank you, take care, and look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.